my career was extremely multidimensional and nomadic. But I'm basically gender scholar and gender expert, and I'm sociologist. And at the moment, I think this is relevant. I am making a foundation which will do research on semi-periphery and alternative developments, because I believe that these alternatives for developments, including global development and European development, will come exactly from semi-periphery. I think this is the key issue. The knowledge to me is the key issue. I'm one of those who tried to combine and still try to combine academic life and activism, and I like to bring knowledge into activism and activist experience to translate into the knowledge. And I think the connection between the two is very important. Maybe it's easier to understand if I say that I'm feminist, and for feminism this is quite natural connection. Nothing new about it, but I think it is not to be forgotten. Why I'm keen on knowledge at this point is because I believe that we are enslaved by a certain paradigm, certain knowledge paradigm. And that knowledge paradigm is governing our opinions, the ways we see the world around ourselves, the way we produce solutions to the problems. Not only the problems, but also the solutions are all within that paradigm, which I think needs to be overcome, so to say. And I truly believe that an alternative paradigm needs to emerge. However, I think it will emerge exactly through this connection between activism and academicism, or activism and theory, if you like. Maybe we are not aware of that, and it's not widely shared. But the way how we see the world nowadays is really within the neoliberal paradigm, which is closely connected to the idea that there is only one way of modernization, and that there is a unilinear type of modernity. This is a very dangerous assumption. This assumption is often not loudly spoken about because it's taken for granted. And most of the people, including activists, are simply blinded with this paradigm. When people go on the streets and when they rebel against something, and then when they seek for something better, if there is no alternative paradigm, it will be very difficult for them to formulate their demands in a proper way. So I think that it is necessary, as I said, to establish an alternative paradigm, or many of them, whatever, but just to step out of this universalist type of knowledge. And I am afraid that European project itself is based on, now more than ever, on this type of thinking. So it is important to identify that and then to step out, because the way we see the world ourselves, the way we see the problems, and the way we see the solutions is all connected to knowledge. It's a very interesting question, because I think Europe looks better in dreams and in visions and on a distance. We had a poet, Desanka Maksimovic, who was saying that she's in love on a distance, so to say. And I think as long as you dream about something, and I think that Europe here is really a good example, I think it looks better to the outsiders maybe than to the insiders in a way. The thing is, and we need to ask an honest question. You see, I think it's a high time for us to go back to the basic questions. And one of these basic questions would be, for my country where I come from, Serbia, is there any alternative to Europe? The problem is that in a political terms, this space of Euroscepticism is overtaken by rightists. And I think that actually these divisions of right and left are wrong, quite old-fashioned type of thinking. And this blocks constructive dialogue about many things. But let's go back to this question, is there an alternative for Europe? I happen to be European. When I was born, I was taught in a school that Belgrade is in Europe, that Yugoslavia is in Europe. I have a problem of identity, already losing Yugoslavia as my frame of identity. I would really need to, I don't know what else would I be if not European. Although I think that Europe also needs to build more another identity, which I would call Earthian identity. We are all Earthians. I think that Europe has built, to my mind, too many boundaries. I often find this to be highly problematic, how much people within the Europe do not understand how many boundaries they have been built, how many frontiers they have produced that are so difficult to cross. I lived in Yugoslavia, which was open to the world. And then it turned to me, my world turned upside down, and I had stories to tell about visas and how many visas I needed to obtain, and how it was difficult to cross the borders, and how by crossing borders I was often assumed to be doing something illegally just because I come from a country which is over there. I was even one arrested because I happened not to have visa for Czech Republic, because I just didn't know that within the few days they introduced visas. It's ridiculous. I think that this visa issue and this issue of who should be allowed and not allowed is one highly sensitive issue, emotional. But I like to turn things to the extreme, to put them in an extreme. Take, for example, an issue of UNESCO protection of heritage. Heritage of different civilizations belong to everyone on Earth. Why would we need visas, and we need visas, to go to visit what is heritage of the world? And if you think from that perspective, this becomes unsustainable. I think it is only a matter of time when all visas will have to be cancelled, and when we will understand that the earth belongs to everybody. Yeah, I think there are differences in Euroscepticism, definitely. Euroscepticism that comes from this background of nationalistic background and fear from change and from connections and exchanges. And then there is this Euroscepticism which comes from the ground of Europe betraying its own basic principles, its starting principles. And yes, I am a dreamer, I'm utopian. I like to declare openly that I'm utopian. I don't see anything wrong with being utopian, because this is how the world moves forward. And I think actually one of the paradoxes of this criticism of utopias is that neoliberalism is utopia, is dystopia, because it's impossible. It's impossible that all people are consumers of luxury goods. That's a ridiculous concept. And this is the economic development concept that we are seeing taking ground and convincing all of the rest of us that something is wrong with us. Well, nothing is wrong with us. The paradigm is wrong, and the paradigm is man-made. And this is what I wanted to argue strongly, that there is none natural law that is making us to have societies governed by neoliberal logic. Neoliberal paradigm is man-made paradigm and it can be changed as anything else. I think we lived under this way of thinking long enough to understand the weaknesses and to move forward. And to do that we need strong alliances of all kinds of people that have critical thinking, activists, citizens who are not that active, intellectuals, artists, etc. We need to make strong coalitions on alternatives. And also what I would like to say is that we need to map out the knowledge that already exists, to connect it, as I called it, to make a knowledge platform, and also to map out all the existing alternatives. Some people are already doing that. I'm not saying this as a completely new idea. I just want to strengthen that way of development, that understanding and exchanging the emergence of these alternatives and elaborating on that and making them more grounded and spreading them is really what can be even speeded up, because I'm eager to see the change as soon as possible. And that's possible to do, and it's possible to create this kind of platform. The platform, knowledge platform, that would feed people back who are eager to know what are the solutions, what are the concepts behind, what is the big picture. At this point I think we lack and we need the connection between micro and macro level. People either think within their enclaves and within their small worlds, or they have this big picture at academia, etc. Although the critical thinking in academia is under big danger at the moment. I think there are many totalitarian trends, like there is a lot of soft totalitarianism, if you like, big brother type of totalitarianism that we have to be aware of. But the thing is that we need to make connections between micro and macro, between micro experiences and micro resistances in everyday life and macro concepts and ideas. And I will give one example. I moved out from Belgrade, metropolitan area, into the into the village. And I discovered how people function on a very different basis than what is registered. This non-monetary economy, exchanges, care economy is really what absorbs 80% of their time and energy and what is giving them resources for survival. So this is what is going on, and not only in my country, it's taking place everywhere, because this is a spontaneous resistance and this is a survival strategy. We still don't have enough of concepts, and we cannot have them because we move within the paradigm which does not allow this to be appropriately explained and appropriately elaborated, and this is what we need. So this is my idea on being European and what is Europe. Europe is a wonderful project. As any human project, it can be wonderful or it can turn into terror. And what is really important also to understand things from processual perspective. Europe is a project. I was listening to Vesna Kesic, Vice Prime Minister, on the night when Croatia became European member, EU member, and I heard her saying, well, it's a great thing that we can move from this conditionality into the position of us creating Europe as well. Well, I would like to believe that this is possible and this is true, but what I see in Europe is really a division between more and less powerful nations, And I have seen similar thing in former Yugoslavia as well previously. So I think it might be overly idealistic to believe that Europe, the way it is equally open for suggestions of small nations from the south and some other nations. And I just want to say that this is a project in making. I want to believe that it is a project in making. I want to believe that it is possible to change it in a positive direction, but I also think that the way to do it is to identify the trends that are counterproductive, the trends that are making this bureaucracy bigger and bigger and more distant from people, etc. It's a very important link, and a lot in feminist literature has been done on this issue. I'm a bit surprised that this issue was not more present in this conference. There are aspects of citizenship that relate to whether and how much women can enjoy their citizenship rights, and that's something that I don't want to get into because it seems to me to be like already quite clear picture, at least in feminist literature. But what that women, in many ways, they don't exercise citizenship rights in the same way men do. But that's something I simply don't want to get into at the moment. What I'm really interested is to engage on the issues of economy of care and how this relates to citizenship and other things. One thing that is very clear to me is that there is time poverty issue, which is closely connected to the present concept of active citizenship. Or better to say, it shows the limitations of active citizenship. If you have time poverty problem, if you are, as a woman, and this is the situation with women, that they work more, doesn't mean that they work paid jobs. They have unpaid labor, but they are very busy, and usually they're more busy than men. The problem is how they can exercise active citizenship and whether they will do it. And if they don't do it, who will do that in their name? And I think one of the most striking examples in that relation, in that context, are single parents, which are like 80%, at least in this region, which I know from the research that I have done, are women. Single parents don't have time, and they cannot get organized so that their voice can be heard. So what we have is that we have invisibility of single parents and and children of single parents, etc., etc. So what I want to say is that to me the whole concept of having to be active, to identify your interests, to identify the ways how you will promote your interests, etc., is a bit unrealistic, and I think it has to change. It's very similar to the thing like talking about multiculturalism and the often heard word tolerance. I don't think that tolerance for the other is enough. I believe that we should love each other. So tolerance means just keeping an eye blind and just tolerate someone. Well, the same thing is here with this idea of active citizenship. Okay, you will get some bits and pieces of rights if you identify your interests, if you organize, if you find channels for funding, if you're loud enough to be heard, and if you are lucky enough to be heard. What does it mean? I want to move into different direction and say that we all are accountable for everyone, and that this is what we need to reflect on, how we can promote that feeling of our own responsibility and how that should be articulated and become part of our new world view. And I think at the moment environmentalist logic can be very helpful because it can help us again as a new paradigm, seeing us as part, little individuals as part of the whole. Obviously, we are facing the limits of individual paradigm on individualism. We have to understand that individualism and this sharp individualism and extreme individualism, which has been advocated and which is taken as the best, is not good enough, and that we have to move into a different direction of seeing us, individual little us, as parts of a big whole. In that sense, I would also like to say that to me this new paradigm that I often elaborate in my writings and try to think what kind of new things it can bring, I think one of these new things is the understanding of connectedness. When I speak about semi-periphery, I want to emphasize that center is the center because it has semi-periphery and periphery. Without them, it wouldn't be the center, and the other way around. And we have to understand interdependence and to go beyond interdependence into understanding connections, connectivity. That is essential. And again, this emerging paradigm from environmental approach can help. We are connected, whether we like it or not, whether we see it or not, whether we understand it, whether we have instruments is another issue. But we are connected, and because we are connected, we can also then situate our accountability differently, because we all do have accountability. When the wars started in my country, I wrote a text in which I said nobody's innocent anymore. And I think this summarizes the thing. I cannot be innocent if evil is happening almost anywhere in the world. Europe I would like to live in would be Europe on Earth. Europe as part of the Earth, open to the Earth. And of course, I love Europe. I'm Eurocentric in a way, in a sense that I love diversity of Europe as I love diversity of Yugoslavia. I was personally very proud of Yugoslav diversity, but that time is gone, of course, and we moved into this ethnically, more or less homogeneous states. But Europe of diversity and cultural history is very important to me. However, I would like to live in Europe which is also aware of its own colonial history. And I think without that, Europe cannot move forward. And colonial history is still very alive in much of what Europe thinks about itself.
Thank you very much.